Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest of my reviews of Marvel's What If animated series on Disney Plus. Yes, once again, into the wonderful world of what if, what would happen if, etc., etc. Before I get into that, hello to those of you who are in the chat, and on the off chance that I have any new viewers, thanks to my appearance on the Kurt Metzger podcast, Can't Get Right, last night. There's a plug. If you haven't already seen it, go check out Can't Get Right podcast over on Kurt Metzger's channel. You can look that up on YouTube. Hello. Welcome to the show. I've got other content too. I got playlists on my channel, but I do this occasionally as well, little reviews. And who is joining me, at least visibly this morning? Ex-Bubba Hotep, Texas Attorney General Secret Agent, Jam Salty, Alice Morgan. Hello to you all. And anyone else in the future world or lurking. And speaking of the future and time travel, that's a very awkward segue into the driving force of today's episode of What If. So the question is, what if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? There are a few problems with this story, but we'll get into it. So kind of goes that I have to do a little preamble here. So in the Doctor Strange movie, there is a very, just afterthought character of Christine, this nurse and or doctor, I forget exactly which, she might also be a surgeon, that Doctor Strange works with. Now, these two have had some kind of relationship, romantic of one kind or another, as implied in the film. However, at least in the movie, her being the absolute total center of his universe, love of his life, was never really established. That they were friends, that they were romantically entangled at one point, but I never got the sense that they were like, star-destined lovers or anything, or that Doctor Strange, in the movie at least, saw her as anything other than a good friend. So it is odd that in this story, she becomes the center of his universe. So what is the main deviation from the movie? Well, the main deviation here is that Doctor Strange is not alone in his drive off to a convention or whatever, or a party in his honor on the night that he has his accident, which leads to his hands being smashed, which leads to him seeking out healing, which leads to him finding the Ancient One and thus becoming the Sorcerer Supreme. In this instance, we have Christine here with him on this night drive, and they get in the car and they talk about how, they're going to go to the party and have some fun, and she's chiding him and stuff, and ha ha ha, it's all sweet and everything. And then we get a little road rage incident where he's stuck in traffic and he weaves around, and then he crashes. A car comes up from behind him because he, brake checked or whatever, and they crash. And instead of his hands getting crushed, she drowns and dies, or collision dies, or whatever. Okay, and this is the main point of deviation from the movie, presumably. Okay, first problem, as I said, Christine was never that big of a deal, at least as established in the film. So that, now, maybe the event of her dying next to him caused him to, I don't know, inflate his sense of love for her, sort of psychologically survivor guilt kind of thing, I guess. But if that's there, it is very subtle. You could also say, you could say his sense of guilt overcame actual love for the woman. But that's more of a psychological analysis that they don't really get into in this. And anyway, so then they imply, and also I like the fact that the cracked glass here is roughly in the shape of a heart, kind of, or at least I kind of see that. Maybe I'm injecting my own interpretation there. Anyway, so she dies, his hands are not destroyed. And then the story makes another complete leap of logic. So events proceed exactly the same as they would have, apparently. So when Doctor Strange got his hands smashed, right, the whole point of that was that he then went on to find a way to heal his hands. And he expended his entire fortune trying to find a healer for his hands, which eventually led him off to the fringes of society and thus the Ancient One and magic and such. In this instance, he's not looking for a healer. They just say in this episode, he went searching for answers after her death. Answers for what? Answers for what? I mean, he's a man of science. He's a surgeon and a doctor. He's seen death a lot of times. He's seen tragic death a lot of times. There's nothing to explain. He lives on the temporal plane at this point. It is difficult for me to believe that the character is established would go searching for answers for someone who died in a car accident, who at this stage in his career is grounded in science and fact and reason. He has no idea that there's magic. I don't think his first idea would be I need to find myself a necromancer. So why would that event, rather than him seeking healing for his hands, a completely different situation, something that conceivably has an answer or a solution because he's a man of science and medicine and healing, why would he go seeking answers for her death? It doesn't make any sense. And they just completely jump over that chain of events. So that was the second problem I had with this procession of events. Anyway, so events occur exactly as they did before. He for whatever reason, he finds the Ancient One. He learns how to become a sorcerer. He finds the Time Stone. Except in this instance, he starts getting ideas using the Time Stone about how he might be able to solve or reverse the issue of her death. But that kind of becomes a sideline, and he's warned against it, of course. The Ancient One and Wong telling him, don't mess around with time. And then everything kind of goes as it was before. He fights Dormammu, and everything in the Doctor Strange movie happens anyway. Right? Okay. So then after all that's done, after he's defeated Dormammu, he's sitting around with the Time Stone. He's thinking to himself, golly gee whiz, I really miss Christine. I really love her. I really feel guilty. I really feel bad about her death. Oh boy, what could I do? And Wong's like, what are you thinking, dude? And I'm just kind of sitting here feeling sad. And Wong's like, don't mess around with time, Strange. Don't do it. Whatever you might do with that Time Stone there, the Infinity Gem that suddenly you're in possession of. And I'm just going to say, don't do something reckless with time that I've already warned you would cause a whole bunch of problems. And then Doctor Strange is like, to hell with that. I'm going to go back in time and change events. Okay. Now, if you've ever seen the 2002 movie, The Time Machine, you will be very familiar with what happens next. Okay, we go through a montage of Doctor Strange attempting to change the course of history. He starts off with his car drive again. He tries to pay attention to what he's doing. He goes right instead of left. But the crash happens anyway and she dies. Okay, and so he goes back again and he starts over again and he tries something different and she dies, and tries something again and she dies, and she tries something again and she dies, and she keeps dying and she keeps dying and she keeps dying and she keeps dying. Now, why does this happen? Okay. Well, there's an idea, and now granted, I am not a quantum mechanist. I'm not a quantum physicist, anything else. Anyway, there's a concept in the idea of time travel called causality, right? So here's the simplest explanation. It's the I shot my grandfather deal. Okay, so I, at some point, find a time machine, and I decide for some stupid reason that I'm going to jump back in time and find my grandfather when he was a teenager, long before he could have, become my grandfather. And I'm going to shoot him. And thus, shooting him stops him from ever becoming my grandfather, and consequently, I would never exist. Right? But the problem is, at least in the whole theory of this thing, in the absence of multiverse or diverging timelines, if my grandfather actually dies and I never existed, then I could never have existed to come back to shoot my grandfather. So something is going to stop me from killing my grandfather. Because otherwise, the whole logic of the events would not make any sense. Okay, you'd create a paradox. And at that point, we start going into the whole sci-fi multiverse theory and that kind of thing, which I'm not saying doesn't necessarily make it untrue, but that's sort of the idea. So Doctor Strange is lamenting the fact that he keeps trying over and over again to save Christine, but he can't, and he laments it, la la la, lament. And then the Ancient One shows up and says, haha, dude, I told you, don't mess with time. Because Christine's death is an absolute event, she calls it. An event that cannot be changed. Okay, now here's where I also kind of start having a little bit of a what? The Marvel Universe, as established, doesn't necessarily have absolute events. They have nexus beings, right? Like the Scarlet Witch and a few others who are effectively the same across various universes. They remain somewhat constant. Okay, that's one thing. But an absolute event, an event that cannot be changed. Okay, this causes a whole bunch of new questions in my mind. Like, okay, so there are events in the Marvel Universe that are completely malleable, but there are specific events that can't be changed. And she describes how he would not have become the Sorcerer Supreme if she had not died. Therefore, she must always die no matter what. Now, that's causality, right? That's a causality loop kind of thing. I mean, she has to die for him to even be there in the first place, to try to manipulate time in order for, her to not die again and all that kind of thing. Okay. But that doesn't make her death an absolute event that cannot be changed. That's just causality. So then no event can be changed, even though we've seen people do time travel all the time at this point in the Marvel Universe between Endgame and so on. The whole idea of what if is that there has been a divergence in time. The whole idea of the TVA is that they're supposed to be there to prevent these things from happening in the first place. Everything's malleable. This has been established over and over again. That's the whole idea behind the TVA, which I still think is a dumb idea the way they executed it, but that's beside the point. So anyway, she says that this event is unchangeable. And Doctor Strange is like, no, you didn't tell, you told me that nothing's impossible. That's why I'm even here. And she says, people have tried it before, but it can't be done. And, what is his name? Castiglio or Cascagali, whatever, the sorcerer's name through all the books that came from. He tried it and he couldn't do it. And so Doctor Strange is like, well, hell, I don't believe you. I believe in the power of magic. Do you believe in magic? And so he says, I'm going to go do this thing, whether you like it or not. And he's about to go away somehow, somewhere. And the Ancient One blasts him with energy to try to stop him, presumably. And he suddenly ends up in a jungle somewhere, I guess. And he asks this guy who shows up, where's the lost library of Castrilogo? And I'm like, wait a sec. How did you get to this point in place? I mean, the time stone, I guess it does teleport you, sort of, but what? So just by chance, I guess, or luck, he ends up in the exact place he needs to be to talk to the exact person he needs to talk to find the lost library, which isn't really lost when he can just sort of show up at this giant temple somewhere. And then he goes, there's no door to the thing, so he teleports himself up to the upper level, and there's a booby trap, Indiana Jones style, on the floor that if he touches it, he'll disintegrate, but he gets rid of that pretty quick. But then he steps on another booby trap, and then he falls through a floor, and this booby trap allows him to survive the fall, because that's how booby traps work when trying to guard something. He just falls, and then he's fine. Right. Okay. And then the guy in the jungle's there again. So what was the point of having any kind of security if the first guy that makes it in there is just going to be accepted just off? He doesn't know who this guy is, by the way. This character here has no idea who Doctor Strange is. He calls him Dr. Armani because he's wearing a suit when he shows up. Okay. Now, remember, as far as I can tell, when Strange goes back in time to try to save Christine, he's jumping back at least 2 years at that point. Okay, so now he's 2 years in the past, just to keep that in mind. Anyway, so he goes wandering around in the caves in the giant library of Castronomo. Again, I forget how to say the character's name. Some ancient wizard who's no longer around anymore. Anyway, you have this gigantic library, and Strange just waves his hands, and he's surrounded by the books. And within 3 seconds, he finds the book that he wants, which is Time Manipulation. This is a really difficult quest on Strange's part. He just kind of shows up at a place, walks into a place, finds the thing he needs. Okay, we're rushing through everything very quick here. Anyway, so he finds the ancient Necronomicon. The Time Manipulation book. And he finds the exact passage he needs. And basically he finds out that he needs a lot more power in order to do what he wants to do. In order to change an absolute event, he needs a lot more power. And how is he going to get this power? Well, he needs to become a magical vampire. I'm not even kidding. He has to become a sorcerer that absorbs the power of other magical beings. Okay? And here, let me see if I can find it again. Let's see. I'm trying to find it goes by awfully quick, apparently. Okay, yeah, so first he tries to do this, and he happens to summon Sithon, or Chthon, or whatever, however you pronounce it. Effectively, the Marvel Universe's version of a Cthulhu-esque creature, the same tentacle creature, presumably we saw at the end of the What If Peggy Carter was the first Avenger Captain America thing. And he gets his ass kicked by the tentacles. And so he starts smaller, he says. So after getting his butt kicked, he starts over. Even though he's warned by this guy, maybe you shouldn't do this, and maybe love, isn't a very good motivator, and maybe this is a bad idea. All these wise people around him, Wong, the Ancient One, this guy telling him, hey, what you're doing is conceivably ridiculously dangerous. And yet they don't stand in his way. It's just, whatever, dude, it's up to you. So he tries again after studying some more and growing a beard. And he ends up first starting off with David the Gnome. I'm not even kidding. He conjures up a garden gnome. I'm just going to call him David the Gnome because I think that's funnier. So he conjures up evil David the Gnome and absorbs him with his, flamey scream thing. And now he's slightly more powerful than he was before. Next, he conjures up some kind of beetle sorcerer thing, and he steals his cape. So he can be like Batwing, evil-looking Doctor Strange. Even though, I guess he left the cloak of levitation. He left all of his responsibilities as Sorcerer Supreme back in the future because he's 2 years in the past at this point. But is he 2 years in the past? No. Just wait. So anyway, we go through a montage of him conjuring up different magical creatures and sucking their life's blood out of them, and at points taking on slight appearances of the things he's absorbing. He becomes demonic, he becomes insectoid, he becomes lizard-like, and on and on. So he does this long montage, and the Watcher's watching this going like, WTF, dude. But I can't do anything about it because I'm the Watcher. And this is where I had a thought. Now, this isn't a spoiler because it doesn't happen, so I'm not spoiling anything. But here's where I had a thought. I thought, okay, Doctor Strange in this story is attempting to change an absolute event, right? Okay, the death of Christine, which leads him to become Sorcerer Supreme. Okay, I thought, what if he succeeds? If he succeeds in saving her life, what is the outcome? And here was my thought, which is a thought that I think is far cooler than what we actually got. What if he succeeds and his success is the events we see in the Doctor Strange movie? Right? What if the outcome of his saving Christine's life is, instead of her being in the car with him, he crashes, smashes his hands, and we get the events in Doctor Strange? What if that was it? What if all of this is effectively a prequel to the Doctor Strange movie, except we couldn't have known that watching the Doctor Strange movie because the Doctor Strange movie is the outcome of this story. What if that had happened? Wouldn't that have been cool? No, it doesn't happen. Okay. So anyway, he absorbs everything and its brother, and he for a second, he senses the Watcher, even though the Watcher is like all, abstract, powerful, and behind the scenes. He's so powerful at this point that he kind of knows the Watcher's there. But it kind of comes and goes. So anyway, he's like, something's wrong. I'm not powerful enough. What is missing? Not quite sure yet. And so he absorbs all this power. You can't quite figure it out. Then finally he goes after Chthon again, or Chthon, and he wins, and he absorbs all these tentacles into him, and now he's part Cthulhu, or so powerful and crazy, and rawr, I'm powerful. Well, then he walks off to talk to his guide in the jungle deal, and he's all old. And we find out that this entire montage of him absorbing monsters has encompassed hundreds of years of time. And Doctor Strange has been, abusing the Infinity Gem to keep himself young and vital this whole time. So he has spent hundreds of years in this library searching, hunting down, absorbing various monsters of evil magic to gain all the power he needs to do this one thing in the past. And once again, our guide is like, dude, you're doing something wrong. You're doing something stupid. You're doing something that's demonstrably wrong and stupid, but I'm just going to lay here and die, and don't try to stop my death, and I'm just dead. And Doctor Strange is like, oh, okay. And it kind of reminded me of in Iron Man 1 when Yinsen, the guy that Tony Stark was trapped in the cave with, is like warning him, don't waste your life. This guy's telling him, you need to turn back. But Doctor Strange is dumb. That's the only way that any of this works. Doctor Strange has abandoned all of his senses. And at this point, you could say, well, he's been corrupted by all the evil things he's absorbed. And I'm like, okay, I could give you that. But everything up until the point at which he became a magical vampire, still doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, so Doctor Strange, he mentions something about there being another one of him. And he's like, what do you mean, another one of me? Like, what? And then we jump back to the point at which Doctor Strange was going to decide whether or not to travel back in time to save Christine. And he decides not to. And I'm like, what? What? Huh? And so Doctor Strange is like, I'm just going to go outside for a walk. It's fine. Everything's cool. Oh my God, the entire world is falling apart. Why is the entire world falling apart? Oh my gosh, what is happening now? Everybody's melting, everybody's smoking away into nothingness and dissolving. And then there's this portal that opens up and an echo of the Ancient One. Because remember, at this point in the timeline, this is after the events of the first movie, right? Ancient One has died, Dormammu's been defeated, Doctor Strange is now just being reflective about what brought him here, the death of Christine. And so now the Ancient One shows up, but it's not really the Ancient One. It's an echo splinter, whatever of the Ancient One sent through time, effectively a ghost. And she explains to him that, so here's the rationale for this. When the Ancient One and Doctor Strange, at his last attempt to save Christine's life, were fighting, when she blasted him with energy, she wasn't trying to stop him. What she did was she divided the timeline in this universe to create two Doctor Stranges. So she created the divergence of that choice to go back in time in the first place. So there was the Doctor Strange that pursued bringing back Christine, and there's the Doctor Strange that told himself not to. And so these two Doctor Stranges exist in the same universe at the same time. Except that Doctor Strange, the evil one, now has gone hundreds of years in the future, right? So you got two timelines running parallel to each other, but we're at two completely different points in those timelines. We've got hundreds of years in the future Doctor Strange on the one hand, and we have just woke up yesterday from Dormammu fight Doctor Strange on the other hand. I guess. And again, I have to ask, where's the TVA? These are variants, right? And you could say, oh, well, you see, all of this is a result of Kang being killed in Loki and everything. And like, okay, I guess. Anyway, so now there's two Doctor Stranges. You have Doctor Strange here, who is about 2 years old as a magical practitioner. And you have Doctor Strange 2, who is hundreds of years older with hundreds of years of experience in magical arts with a zillion evil beings inside of him and the power thereof. Anyway, so Doctor Strange and Wong understand that something is probably going to happen. There's going to be a confrontation. So Wong and Doctor Strange cast this protective spell on Doctor Strange in order to, give him some added security against whatever's coming, as everything's melting around them, including Wong. Wong is just dissolving. And so he's protected now. He's got a little shield on him. And then all of a sudden, Doctor Strange is pulled through a Vorpal Warp somehow in some way, because evil Doctor Strange has effectively summoned him into his own pocket universe in order to confront him, because they need to. He needs this Doctor Strange. He needs his other half in order to become powerful enough to save Christine. So Batwing Vampire Doctor Strange faces good Doctor Strange, and they square off and they argue, and bad Doctor Strange is like, this has to happen. I've sacrificed too much. And good Doctor Strange is like, dude, this is insane. And yeah, I know it's insane, but I got to do it. It's too late now. I got to do it. And so now they have a super duper wizard fight at the place where the crash happened. Because evil Doctor Strange brings good Doctor Strange back to the point of the crash to try to convince him that this needs to happen. And good Doctor Strange is like, you're insane. You're going to destroy the universe. And evil Doctor Strange is like, dude, I will make you. And so they have a giant wizard fight. And I mean, it's kind of cool. First off, let me also say that, the voice acting, the animation in this is all really good. Okay, I've got to give it props again. Animation's neat. I like the look of it and everything. But once again, I'm just kind of not sold on the logic of the story. Anyway, so this goes on for several minutes of having a wizard fight. Even the capes start fighting each other, which is kind of funny in a way. Speaking of the acting, I just got to make a comment here. General comment about the Doctor Strange as represented in the MCU. He's far too goofy. He makes far too many sort of pop culture references, like the whole Beyonce thing in the Doctor Strange movie. That kind of exemplifies it. The Doctor Strange that I would prefer to see, the attitude I would prefer to have from the character, is something a bit more serious. He's supposed to be kind of the dry, deadpan humor kind of guy. Not a guy who goes, and I'm quoting here from this episode, when he's looking through the time manipulation book, at one point he reads something that is like an obvious statement, like time manipulation is dangerous. And he says, well, no doy. And then moves on. And I'm like, Doctor Strange would not go no doy. No. There's a certain there's a certain sophistication I expect or hope for out of the Doctor Strange that I want to see. And I know I'm not going to get it in the MCU because they made him too laid back and casual at this point, but that's what I want. Anyway, also one other thing. In the montage of Christine dying over and over again, they take it about 2 examples too far because it starts becoming comedic. The ways and the variousness and how she dies starts to become almost a satire of itself. And that takes away from any sort of like drama or tragedy they might have engendered in the first couple of times. That was a bit of an off step, I think. Anyway, they have a wizard war. big wizard war, boom, boom, boom. And evil Doctor Strange eventually wins. Oh, sorry. No, there's a moment where good Doctor Strange is teleported to Fantasyland where Christina's talking to him, going like, "Don't you want to see me again, Stephen? Save me, Stephen." And he's like, "This isn't you. You're an impersonation." As of course we knew it was an impersonation, and it's evil Doctor Strange. And then they fight some more. And eventually, evil Doctor Strange is able to get away all of the protection Doctor Strange had from his manipulations, and he vampire absorbs him. Oh my gosh. And he vampire absorbs him, and now he's got all the power he needs to change time. And so he goes through this little ritual of magically resurrecting her and bringing her back to life. And then she's alive, but he looks like an absolute, monster in this instance. And the world is still melting around them, so I'm not quite sure what happened here. Anyway, he saves her, and then she starts dissolving because he messed around with time and reality in a way that wasn't supposed to be messed around with. Like everybody had told him from the beginning, like every book he could have possibly read had told him from the beginning. But of course, scientist Doctor Strange ignores all evidence and testimony in front of him and says, "Aha, I can do something better." Now, see, I could believe this from the Doctor Strange we see in the comic books. If you've ever read the original Doctor Strange origin story, which I think is one of the greatest comic book origin stories of all time, the Doctor Strange at the beginning of the comic books was a self-absorbed, arrogant narcissist. It was his narcissism and his God complex after his hands were hurt that caused him to go off to find healing, not to help people, but because every part of his personality, sense of identity, and power came from his ability to commit surgery. Or commit surgery, to perform surgery, I should say, commit surgery. And that's what led him to the Ancient One, and that's what led him to have to become more humble over time. That Doctor Strange, that sense of certitude and I can do anything and rightness and arrogance, I could believe that Doctor Strange may be going down this path. But the casual, fun-loving, slightly goofy Doctor Strange, sentimental man that we saw in the movie makes no sense for this outcome, even in a divergent timeline. Anyway, so evil Doctor Strange realizes that everything's falling apart, and he tries to hold it back. And, resurrected Christine has absolutely no idea what's going on. And in her mind, she just got teleported to Nightmare World, which is kind of funny. And the Watcher appears because Doctor Strange's actions here are literally destroying this universe, apparently. So this tangential universe is being destroyed, literally, because of what Doctor Strange did. And as the walls are, again, literally closing in around him, he begs the Watcher to help him change this. He'll take the punishment. And again, I thought, okay, maybe it's still going to happen. Maybe this is a prequel to the Doctor Strange movie. Maybe the Watcher is going to go like, okay, and snaps his fingers, and time's reversed, and Christine's not there, and his hands get hurt, and we get the movie version, the MCU version. But no, Watcher's like, dude, I'm not going to help you. You screwed up. I can't interfere. So long, goodbye. Everything closes in around to a single little point in space. There's a moment of quiet, and then we zoom in to find out that Doctor Strange gets to spend, I guess, eternity living inside this tiny little crystalline bubble of nothing forever with his guilt. At least until he's released in some fashion later on in this series or something. And then we go to credits. And that's it. So, couple of things. As I've said, most of this story doesn't make any sense based on the canon, quote unquote, that was established in all the movies. It doesn't make any sense, right? So, I don't believe this story. It threw me off all over the place. The established events, the established logic of both the characters and time travel in the MCU make most of this make absolutely no sense. And the ending, wouldn't it have been cool if this was actually a sort of sidewise prequel to the actual events in Doctor Strange? It wasn't. So the only thing I can think of at this point to make this worthwhile is this version of Doctor Strange has to appear later on in this series as a villain or as a reluctant ally. Or, and here's my other theory, this version of Doctor Strange somehow, some way is the one we end up seeing in the Spider-Man Far From Home, or not Far From Home, No Way Home movie. Because I am still, even though I'm not a big fan of the overall attitude of the Doctor Strange in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, watching the trailer for No Way Home, it baffles me that Doctor Strange, even in the MCU, would be so stupid as to start messing around with reality and multiverse stuff, knowing what little he has to already know from the Infinity War and the books he's read and so on. That he would just, on the whim of Peter Parker wanting it to be, that he would mess around with reality. It's got to be an evil double or Mephisto or this guy. I don't know. Otherwise, if it's not, then Doctor Strange is just an absolute idiot. And it's going to be a very sad addition to the chain of events leading up to Multiverse of Madness. But who knows? Anyway, that was my review, such as it was. On a scale of 1 to 5, in relative terms to the other episodes in this series, I'd give it a 2.5, maybe, thereabouts. I mean, I like the fact that there was a downer ending, which a lot of what ifs, ended up having, which was appreciated, sort of. Not everything was wrapped up a nice little bow at the end, or whatever. So that was fine. Animation was good, voice acting was good, but I just couldn't buy the chain of events. Remember, the what if can only make sense if it feels like it's an actual variance on established events. And none of this felt that way. And that's part of the problem. So I'll take any comments you guys might have, and I'll say a few more hellos since a lot of you have joined since then. I'll scroll up a bit. Let's see who else has been here or is here. Zalbla, Dark Resurrect, Jake Tungseth, Alice Morgan, St. Michael, Bridget, Mike Savage, Magister, if I didn't already say that, Sadistic Atheist, Ostsan, Keeverdam, who else is here? No One Nowhere, John Miller, Hans Strong, Danosaurus Rec. Okay, book 'em, Dano. And I think that's everybody. Oh, Up North, Steve. Hello. So let's see. Anything else? John Miller says, sounds about average. Yeah, I mean, again, in relation to this series has had some really shaky overall logic and episodes so far. My favorite of them has been What If T'Challa Becomes Star-Lord? Even though there were several problems with that in relation to the others, that was the best one so far. Up North, Steve, they need a strong, independent woman to save Doctor Strange. Well, I keep wondering if they're ever going to introduce the character of Clea. Because Clea is, I think she was established as the Sorcerer Supreme of the Dark Dimension. And actually also Dormammu's daughter, I think it was. Anyway, and also Doctor Strange's love of his life, at least in most of the old comics. So they have a ready and waiting female Sorcerer Supreme to bring into the story that is not simply a Doctor Strange clone or a Doctor Strange gender swap. I'm surprised they haven't even mentioned her yet. I'm hoping they do, because that would be an interesting twist. Maybe the Multiverse of Madness will bring that around. Hans Strong, any changes need a good, quick explanation for any and all changes for logic reasons, preferably done through action, not to slow things down through boring explanations. What I thought it would have been interesting, and I don't think it would have thrown things off too much, is if Doctor Strange, instead of finding the Ancient One, he found Casilio or whatever. Okay, whatever the villain of the Doctor Strange movie's name was, because I can't remember. It's just whatever that guy's name was. If that guy had found Doctor Strange first, right? If he'd found Doctor Strange and corrupted him towards a different end to solve his problem rather than meeting the Ancient One, that might make more sense. Or if Doctor Strange stumbled upon Dormammu somehow, that would have been a more interesting and more logical quasi outcome than him just going through the exact same series of events as the Doctor Strange movie. I mean, that was sort of like watching the Captain Carter episode. Everything that happens in Captain America just happens to Captain Carter, and there's not much variance. So, John Miller, can the Watcher do anything than just watch the different outcomes? In the comic books, he does. He has some level of cosmic power, and he can interact physically and elsewise with the realities he's overseeing. But he and the rest of his race of people are honor bound not to, even though the Watcher in the comic books does all the time. So yes, he could do something. I'm not quite sure whether or not in this instance he could have, but again, I don't know what the powers of the Watcher are in this iteration, and they've varied in the comic book, so it's hard to say. Sadistic Atheist, they did address his arrogance in the movie, at first anyway. Yeah, kind of, but it kind of went by the wayside so quick, you might as well have not even had it there. I mean, when he was like distraught over his hands being destroyed and everything, that was it. But also, even that was kind of a shift from the character they'd established prior to the accident. So he was sort of like a soft narcissist or something. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, his whole personality ups and downs during the course of the Doctor Strange movie. I understand they had to make the character more likable. I don't think they needed to. I think if they had stuck to the original comic book idea of him just being a real jerk that you learn to like over the course of the film, where he actually has an arc, not only in his discovery of the magical arts, but also in his journey as a person to move out of arrogance and see things where he's just a small part of a larger world and not being the center of the universe. I think that would have been a more interesting story, a deeper story, more character study. But they went sort of the touchy-feely route and made him more likable, which, like I say, Han Strong, I hate this animation style, too blocky, clunky. I guess, yeah, it's a matter of taste. I thought that there were several instances in this episode where the facial movements and body movements and everything were very smooth, very well done. I don't know if it's my favorite animation style, but I thought it was all right. And Texas Attorney General Secret Agent, can we get Cumberbatch back to making Sherlock episodes? I missed those. I think that might be done, save for the occasional maybe Christmas special or something in the future. I don't know if they're going to do any more of those. I think that ship has passed. And personally, the Doctor Strange, the Sherlock Holmes series ended for me as soon as Sherlock killed the guy instead of solving the problem. I was like, what? And that was at the end of what? It's like season 3 or whatever. The other guy with the mind palace, the guy with the glasses, I forget what his name was. Anyway, when Sherlock killed that guy rather than actually solve the problem, I figured, well, he's failed. I lost all interest. Like he found the problem he couldn't solve with his mind, and so he just killed the guy. I was like, that ruins the character as established for me. So I kind of lost my interest in that at that point. Because if the whole idea is you're going to constantly confront Sherlock with ever increasing villains of difficulty, at some point he's got to meet his match, right? It's the same thing as with like the first couple Iron Man movies. You're just going to constantly have him face somebody else who's got a suit of armor, right? Or like in The Flash, where it's always just another speedster that's more powerful than he is. It gets stupid after a while. And I guess either bad writing or, I don't know, the sacrifice of character. And lastly, because I got to wrap this up, John Miller, I don't know if this was in the comic, but the animated movie that introduced me to Strange was that he failed to save his sister, but he was the best surgeon. When he lost his hands, he lost everything. Yeah, I have that. Yeah, the animated Doctor Strange movie is actually, it's a bit too action oriented for me with like combat wizards at the beginning and all that. But that aside, the general progression of Doctor Strange in that movie, I liked all right. But again, I didn't like the whole sister sentimental thing. You didn't need that for the original comic book. You didn't need it for any other telling of the story. I think the character is far more interesting and far more compelling if he starts out as an unlikable, arrogant jerk that, just like himself, you have to learn to like and come to like because of his own personal journey and understanding he's not the center of the universe. There is, in fact, a multiverse. There is, in fact, a larger magical universe out there that he has to take care of and he has to strive to protect. And that causes the character to grow. I really wish Marvel had gone that direction with it. They didn't. Oh well. And so we get half Hanna-Barbera cartoon Doctor Strange some of the time. Anyway, everyone, I'm going to call it there. Hope you enjoyed this review for what it was. I will do another one next week, per usual. A couple of programming notes. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, will be another episode of TED Excellence. And I will be joined by Sinatra Says as we delve into another, I'm sure, excellent example of intellectual expansion through a off-brand TED Talk. And also another programming note. Let's see. This Sunday, now make sure I get my dates right. This Sunday night, currently scheduled for 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, will be the second installment of Scribe Light Drive-In Theater, where Sister Scribe and myself will watch another goofy public domain movie. This time it will be The Wasp Woman from 1959, Roger Corman horror classic. So I hope you join me and Sister Scribe for that on Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. But until then, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for your participation. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. And otherwise, everyone, I hope you are all having a good day. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.